Welcome on a Wednesday night, not Generation X, not Generation Y or Z, Generation Movie. My name is J.W. Colwell, joined as always by my partner in crime, my 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 buddy, my Wednesday night buddy, Rich Drees of FILMBUFF Online.
I would hope I'm your buddy all the week, all 7 days, not just Wednesday night, man.
Well, Wednesday night's when we get to see each other.
That's true.
That's all it meant. It wasn't.
I mean, we message back and forth.
Yeah, we talk all the time. We read a lot of stuff back and forth. Like, what? I don't believe this happened. Before we get to the movie tonight, which by the way is a fantastic movie. I know you've had an interesting Philadelphia Film Week. We talked about it beforehand. We don't need to get into that. I do want to get into some of the news of the day, which is pretty big news.
Or the news of yesterday, particularly, you mean?
Yeah, well, we have new DC overlords.
I, for one, welcome our new DC overlords.
They have whimsy, which is, again, I use that word very, very wisely. I don't throw whimsy around, but whimsy is the word I need when I'm in my DC is so goddamn dark that you need a little whimsy. And both these guys, James Gunn and Peter Saranen, they've made two of the funnier DC movies, right? I mean, and one that has actually quietly become a DC movie that you can go to and show kids and you can watch with families, and it's happy and it gets the comic books and it gets the characters, and that's Shazam, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So I am moderately hopeful. I am a little bit worried, though. I'm a titch worried that.
How so?
Well, because Zaslav's still in charge, right? So these are two really interesting choices for DC overlords, because Gunn brings the really kind of wonky, all over the place Guardians of the Galaxy energy, and the other one brings a real sense of, I can make DC movies that are Marvel-ish with a little bit of fun, a little bit of whimsy, some serious stuff, but still good. And he also was building bigger ties in his Shazam movies, right? He already. So my concern is Zaslav, who may or may not be obsessed with the Snyderverse, which makes me nervous. And Cavill's back. Rich, there's nothing I want more than Cavill to get a good Superman movie.
Oh, same here. And I think that's going to be one of James Gunn's top priorities. He's going to be handling the creative side. Jeff Salav, crap, I've already messed up his name. He's going to be handling more of the business side, according to the Hollywood Reporter, who kind of broke this news.
They're good choices, though. They're really good choices.
Jeff will handle running interference with Zaslav for the most part.
We need to put that guy just away.
Yeah. James Gunn's an interesting choice, because normally we don't see a director getting elevated to this kind of studio executive position.
Also, a director with this much baggage, because he almost fake baggage. I don't want to say real baggage. It's not real baggage, but it was created baggage. And Zaslav has come down as fairly conservative. So it's kind of, but he knows the business, and the business is telling him the Peacemaker is profitable, and Suicide Squad was one of the better DC movies. So I mean, maybe it's a good choice.
I think it's funny if we can address the baggage issue. Everybody pretty much knows the story that some right-wing banana heads tried to make a deal out of some old poor judgment jokes,
bad Halloween decisions that all of us have made
10 12 years ago, and which he had already gone and apologized for and shown that he's a better person. And they kind of brought it up because James Gunn was saying some pretty fairly progressive / liberal political commentary in his own Twitter feed. So some right-wing nut jobs got upset, complained to Disney. Disney kind of knee jerked and did Gunn dirty. I felt by immediately, well, no, you're off of Guardians 3. Gunn said okay, went over, did the Suicide Squad, did Peacemaker.
All the Guardians, by the way, did not say okay. All the Guardians were like, "What? No, 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 no."
Yeah.
Right.
In the meantime, he makes good with Disney again, but he already has this established relationship with Warner Brothers. So now this guy who, this right-wing guy who is trying to get Gunn fired and run out of the business has inadvertently made him one of the most powerful men in the business right now.
Yeah,
and it makes me laugh.
It's super cool. Joe, thanks for chiming in. Must be Wednesday night. Good evening, gentlemen. I hope all is well with you and yours. It is, Joe. Tim Milliken gives a hearty thumbs up, wearing his Philly shirt, I think, or clap. Appreciate that. They'll meet DC great, just not again, just great. It's fine. And Cavill's back. I like Dark DC. Joe,
I'm agreeing there with Timothy. Yeah, I think they're really going to do some great work here, and it's because I think Gunn is a good storyteller, and that's why he got. And basically, Kevin Feige said when he hired James Gunn, a guy to take over, $150 million superhero movie from a guy who basically had made budgets.
Slither. He made smaller. Slither.
He made
and a couple other things.
And a couple of other things with, his budget on those movies were what they spend on craft services for Guardians of the Galaxy. Let's face it.
Chris Pratt's hair budget. But yeah, I mean, I think he's a really good choice.
James Gunn's a good storyteller, and that's why he got hired for Guardians. And I think he's going to pay that idea forward. He's going to find the best storytellers, not the most experienced filmmakers, maybe, but the best storytellers. And then they'll craft these things together. I've already done my
first. They already did. They already announced the first thing. The first thing that got announced was they've been working on a Green Lantern show, and it immediately got put forward again. Although they got rid of some of the scripts, but it's good news. We have to talk about the Dark DC, Joe. Anyway, but what we have tonight is not Dark DC. What we have tonight is widely regarded for me as. So I do want to see one other thing first. So we lost a week because of the hurricane, and I am sorry about this. We had rescheduled a movie and cut a movie out. We had originally envisioned for Halloween weekend for Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. So I am sorry about this, but we will be on next week with Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which means
Halloween doesn't have to end on October 31st.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm going with.
At least until November 2nd.
It is a state of mind, and it can play through Wednesday for you this year. A lot of the Halloween attractions are going to be open past the past the 4th, past Halloween Day and November 1st. So we're going to be with you next week doing Halloween 3 Season, which we're doing that early announcement. I am sorry. What happened was bad on my fault being stuck in a state that gets hit by hurricanes. And then also when we moved things around, we moved the movie out of a different spot got rid of it and didn't change the schedule. So our bad.
And I didn't catch it when you announced My Favorite Year last week.
Yeah, and I didn't think about it
until today when you sent me the link for to log on to do this tonight.
And I was like, damn it.
Isn't it?
Yeah, we screwed up. It's okay. It's okay. We'll get the Halloween. We'll get the Halloween episode next week. It'll be fine. Tonight, however, My Favorite Year. It is a chef kiss of a movie. It is. I can't. First off, until October 31st, and for everybody who's here who has HBO Max, it is on HBO Max in glorious high definition until October 31st. I encourage you all to go out and watch it. Anybody who listens to the show or watches the show, if you've never seen it, there is nothing that is not pleasant about this movie. There's nothing that if you love movies, you will not like find something to love. If you love television and comedy television from the 50s, there's nothing to love. Basically, quickly, the plot goes something like this. An aging, drunken movie star gets asked to appear on a Sid Caesar-like show, and one of the Jewish writers is tasked with keeping track of him for the week leading up to the show. Um, it is laugh out loud funny. It is exceptionally well done. It has an actual movie star in Peter O Toole who gives a thrilling, mesmerizing, charismatic. I would argue, Rich, this has to be up. Like, he has a lot of charismatic performances, right?
Yes.
But we don't have a lot of Peter O'Toole charismatic performances in the 80s. I would put this performance up against a lot of performances in the 80s that maybe won Oscars.
And it's not just charismatic. There's a very strong emotional core that fuels his performance.
A sadness
in the third act.
Effusive sadness.
And how it's revealed, I think, is what really makes this movie a notch above what it just could have. It just could have been a silly comedy about corralling the drunk actor for the live TV show. And it does get to be that at times, but I think it's that core bit of sadness. And let's face it, this is based. This character is based mostly on Errol Flynn.
Yeah, and the writer is based on Mel Brooks.
In part.
And so, the other ties are Richard Benjamin, who's the director, who's an actor, was in a lot of movies in the 80s. Saturday the 14th, Love at First Bite, in particular, one of the greatest comedy genre films, and other things, a lot of other things.
One of the first Star Wars spoofs on television, Quark.
Yeah,
which was I believe that was a Mel Brooks joint as well. No, Buck Henry. I'm sorry, Buck Henry wrote.
But Richard Benjamin directs, and he was a page that worked at NBC on during Sid Caesar heyday and on NBC. It is a love letter to the 50s. It is a love letter to comedy. It is a love letter to movie stars and action films from the 50s. It's got a lot of good things going on, and it's got a history, and it's one of those. It's got a lot of heart, and it's one of those movies that is a fascinating how it got produced, how it was made. So, what do you got, Rich? Give me something.
Honestly, I mean, everybody kind of knows, we just kind of hit the major points there, though. Mel Brooks was writing for Sid Caesar on Your Show of Shows, and this film is very much based on Your Show of Shows. Joseph Bologna's character of King Kaiser is very King Kaiser, Sid Caesar. You can't get much more of a
Kaiser is Caesar in German.
Selma Diamond, who plays the wardrobe lady here, and you may remember
hilarious.
her from one of the early bailiffs on Night Court. That was her last roles before she died in between seasons 2 and 3, I think it was. She was another Your Show of Shows writers, and also she was the inspiration for Rosemarie's character on the Dick Van Dyke Show, which was also about the comedy writers' room of a live weekly comedy variety sketch show.
So it has a lot of DNA there, and then also, so what happened? One of the things that comes up, the original script is written by Norman Steinberg. They come up with, basically, I was reading about offering the role to Peter O'Toole. And Peter O'Toole, at this point, wasn't hurting for roles or anything, but he viewed it as a great capper to his career. So when he's offered the role, he reads the script, and even though the script is jam packed with comedy, I think he talks about a meeting with Brooks and Benjamin where he basically says, "I think there's a lot more on the page than you guys are getting out of this character." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, I think his drunkenness is, and he beefed up the role a little bit and got them to write a little bit, and it's schmaltzy. It's a tad schmaltzy, but it gives him a latch. He's got all of these different pieces working for him, and it's one of his best roles. He was one of our most gifted actors ever. Like if you've never seen Peter O Toole movies, go back, watch
Yes.
Lawrence of Arabia, watch how grand he is as an actor. He is, and this movie is like a culmination point for him where he got to do many different things, and he had never been really a big comedy person. And the movie before that he'd done was The Stuntman was before this. So he's coming off a really serious movie. He wants to do something fun, but he also sees that there's more to the page, which I thought was really interesting. That he sat down with Benjamin and Mel Brooks and said, "There's a lot more to this character than you guys have given that's on the page, right?"
Yeah. And he's right. I mean, just why is he a drunk? And that can just oh well, he's an actor. I mean, there's even the joke in here. Of course he's an actor. Of course he's beneath us. He's an actor. But the movie doesn't embrace the idea that actors are terrible people. It explores that idea. Whereas characters in the movie, may think, they're actors. The movie kind of explores that, and I guess this is mostly through Peter O'Toole's insistence that let's dig into this guy and figure out why he is like that.
And also the idea that you're looking at a character where the Benjy Stone character is meeting his hero, and that is a trope that we get every once in a while, where you meet your hero and they're flawed, and it becomes like kind of thing where you're like, it becomes a sad movie, right? This becomes like your hero's flawed, and then there are lines of dialogue that are written in this movie that are, I don't need you life size. I need my Alan Swans as big as they can be. Like they're beautiful. Like there's so much beauty in the screenplay by Norman Steinberg, I believe it is.
Yep.
And it's waves, and the chemistry between Peter O'Toole and Mark Lynn-Baker is off the charts, and it's the kind of thing where you're watching it and you're going, I wonder how they prep for this, and it's really nice. Like it's a funny movie, like, and that's the thing. I want to say nice, but it's funny. Like there's not a lot of movies that you can watch, although we're gonna have two in 1982 that are throughout the entire movie funny. This is one of them where you just you can watch the entire movie and see it for all its different pieces, but the set pieces work so well, and it's just it's an amazing piece.
And what's amazing is you have such a seasoned actor in Peter O'Toole, and then Mark Lynn-Baker is basically coming off of Broadway. He had done some stage stuff. He did a Woody Allen movie that most of it got cut, and he's like barely in it. But here, it's like this movie rests on his shoulders even more so than I think Peter O'Toole's. I mean, Peter O'Toole's is the emotional core of this movie, but I think because the way it's framed as his character looking back at a great time in his life, that puts a lot of pressure on him in this movie, and he gets kind of frantic, and it still feels very grounded though. And I think, as a first real screen performance, it's amazing work.
Yeah, and that's the acting. Picking the actors is one of the, like, when you're looking at like the Summer of '82 in those movies, or you're looking at 1982 movies, the actors and the chemistry that they bring to the table in these movies, we see it. We don't see it quite as much today. Sometimes you'll go into a movie and you'll watch it and you'll see the chemistry, and you don't always get the level of chemistry that are in some of these movies from the 80s. And this is one of them, where you look at it and you just go, like, him and Peter O'Toole look fantastic together, and everything they work out now. It gets produced. MGM decides on a date that they're going to release it. it comes out on that date. And it doesn't do well, Rich.
No.
And this is in October. This is going to sound ridiculous, but we have two movies bearing their evil heads. Still at this point, it opens on October 1st of 1982, and it opens to $266,000. It hits 52 screens that weekend. It ends up Go ahead.
How much was it the opening weekend?
266,000.
Okay. Is that a per screen or no? Because that seems remarkably small even for
no, it's 266,000. It was only on 52 theaters. Okay. It was 1.5% of the total gross. It ended up grossing $17 million. And here's where it gets really interesting. So I was talking to somebody in another group. There was a lot of chatter in the Thing group this week. And one of the things that came up is why is it always said that E.T. crushed the Thing? And this is another one of those movies that's in the waves of box office for the Things, or for the E.T. E.T. is in its 18th week at that point. An Officer and a Gentleman, also part of the drag down of this movie, is in its 11th week and doing just gangbusters.
Yeah.
So what happens is it opens, but it doesn't open. It's you're talking about the 18th and 11th week of two movies that are mega hits. And so it's a weird thing. It ends up grossing 17 million though. And so its opening weekend, weirdly enough, is only 1.5% of the total gross, which is something you never see today. Its adjusted box office is 54 million. So you're talking about a moderate hit, a movie that would be for a big budget comedy film with actual actors that are older. Mm-hmm. You're talking about maybe a Ticket to Paradise kind of level event, right? Where movies that are doing well with older actors. Lost City, 54, around 50, more than 54 million, obviously.
The budget on this was only 7.9 million though. So it was, if it didn't make, if it didn't break even, it came really darn close to it with that box office take, 20 whatever.
Yeah, 20, and it lasted for a while. So I mean it played for a good chunk of time into 1983. And so it has a lot of oomph to it. It's kind of one of those movies that stuck around, and if you've seen it or been part of it or watched it, it sticks in your craw a little bit, where you develop a love for it. And if it appears on, you'll watch it every single time it's on.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So Joe writes, I have to admit, just like Dead Man Don't Live, I hadn't heard of this flick. Joe, get thee to HBO Max. You got two movies to watch on HBO Max, Joe. Before Halloween, you have two movies to watch on HBO Max: Barbarian and this, Joe. You'll love this, though, Joe. It's one of the great American comedies. But the box office isn't great. It kind of hangs around for a while, though. Eventually goes from 50 theaters opening weekend all the way up to 700, which that's a pretty good indicator that it's spread out as much, and again, with box office that we're talking about now, when you look at box office, you're looking at, for example, Black Adam opens on 4,500 screens, makes $68 million or whatever it made, 62. But 4,500 screens as opposed to, in the 80s when things were just not doing as much. But it does well. It ends up, it makes its money back. It eventually gets to DVD and cable and VHS, I should say, and possibly even beta at the time, and does well on all those formats, right?
Yeah.
It's
it's a
little
good
engine
solid analog title in terms of home video. It's not a
yeah, and
big
I
hit,
also,
but
but I feel that when Amazon is buying the MGM library for movies like this, I guarantee somebody at Amazon who's in acquisitions, this is one of the movies on the list where they went, yeah, we get that, we can put that, and well then, it's definitely something that's um part of it. You know what I mean? Part of that library acquisition. Um, so one thing that cannot be talked badly about, and that as we're playing through, um, I will say that the reviews are stellar. Like the reviews are off. Like they're so high. Like it's even got good reviews now, right? I mean, it's when you're looking at it right now, it's tracking on Rotten Tomatoes. Rich is one of the highest ones we've had. It's at 96% with an 84% audience score.
that seems
And
like a perfectly reasonable score.
well, and it also like what I also like in Rotten Tomatoes that they've done here is that they've given you movies that would would be like a similar kind, like what I think it's an interesting kind of place for it. But basically, the movies they bring up for this movie are The Odd Couple, the original producers by Mel Brooks, Paper Moon, which are all like they're all right in the wheelhouse of similar titles. But
Mhm.
96 is high, Rich. That's one of the highest ones we've had, where you look at it and you just go, um, and the classic reviews, I mean, you know, I think when its place in history is kind of solid, it also has Oscar nominations. It also has things with the film being nominated that are also very important. And I think it's one of those movies that the critics ate it up. Like they
Mm.
absolutely you're looking at the aggregate sites, it's high. Like
Mhm.
um
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did my default. Let's go find Roger Ebert's review of this, and I
yes.
couldn't find his print review, but I did find his kind of the piece he wrote after Peter O'Toole passed away, and he uh, he kind of basically says this. Um, uh, his role in My Favorite Year was perhaps the first semi-official Peter O'Toole as himself role. Alan Swann, a soused troublemaking star in decline, was modeled on Errol Flynn, but seemed spiked with bits of seemingly personal brio. And maybe that's another reason why O'Toole was so insistent on digging into this character, because he maybe saw a little bit of himself, because much like some of his other British acting friends of his acquaintance,
Richard
he,
Burton,
Oliver
among others.
Reed, Peter
Yeah,
O'Toole had been known to raise a glass now and then. So I think Ebert kind of wisely picks that out. That yes, this is maybe Peter O'Toole playing himself here a little bit.
yeah, and I think I was looking at some of the reviews, and the word that almost always comes through on these reviews, right? The word is charming. It is a charming film. It's got a sweet nature to it. It's funny. There's nothing too offensive in it, and almost all of the characters, except for a few, are good people. Even the ones that are bad are kind of they're okay. Except like the boss Rojak isn't great. He isn't a great guy. He was valued after some of the mafia bosses from the 1950s New York. But it's charming. It's an effervescent movie. It's a movie where you watch it and you bathe in it a little bit. You watch, like, you have Peter O'Toole playing Alan Swann. He's a swashbuckling star of the 50s. He gets drunk a lot. The person he's paired with is Benjy Stone, who's basically a young writer and who just idolizes, the screen star for all the things he is on screen.
A ball of neurotic energy.
Yes, he is. He is chaos in the film. He is like, he doesn't know how to talk to women. He doesn't know a lot, but he knows every single line of dialogue from an Alan Swann movie. But he knows every version of whatever dumpling that you order at a Chinese restaurant. Benjy Stone knows the right ones to get. And there's something really interesting about the chemistry where you're watching the movie. The chemistry is, it's almost palpable. It's like where you're looking at it and you're watching the movie, and they're like, he's teaching Benjy how to do things. Benjy is teaching him that, and Benjy's teaching him how to maybe, you need to take care of the pieces of your life that are broken. You need to fix them. It's an astonishing performance. I'm looking at all the nominees for like awards. When you look at movies where Peter O'Toole was nominated, he had so many roles. When we Goodbye Mr. Chips and Lawrence of Arabia and all these movies. And this is one of the movies where you watch him, and this is a movie my dad could watch with me, and I could watch with my dad, where my dad, I was doing the Benjy side of things, and he was doing like, this is one of my, this is The Lion in Winter. This is Lawrence of Arabia, for God's sake. You know what I mean? And it's such a great performance where you're watching it going, it's something to just behold. And Mark Lynn-Baker does a really good job standing up to him. And so whether or not, when we're watching these movies and we're telling you about them, here's the thing, like, you're going to have 96% is super high in Rotten Tomatoes. So if you come off our show and you go look a movie up and you go 96, how? That's super high. Realize that this movie, even with its slight flaws, and there are a couple, I would argue that the one flaw it has, it's a little schmaltzy, but I don't care. I think it works, right?
I would argue we don't really get much of a resolution to the Benjy and Casey romance story arc.
No, there's a kiss, and then it's chaos leading into the show.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it kind of like, it feels like it kind of gets pushed out of the way.
Also for 1982, and one thing I will say for 1982, it's got a wonderful mixed family message going on, because Benjy's a Jewish kid from Brooklyn. His mom has remarried a boxer who's Filipino. So you have this wonderful like mixed family, which is very like, it's something you don't see a lot in 80s movies. It's like it's very interesting. And then also it has like the recreations within the film of the Alan Swann movies, Defender of the Crown, and I can't think of the swashbuckling one. Defender of the Crown is the Robin Captain of Tortuga. That's exactly what it is.
There's one of the films that they're watching. There's where he's kind of in like it's one of the swashbucklers. He's in like a green, almost Errol Flynn Robin Hood costume, because they're kind of beating you over the head with that. And the way his wig is, and there's like one or two shots in there, and this is the first time I caught it, so I haven't had a chance to kind of go and like, compare them. But there's like one or two shots in there that looks like Joe Johnston went and aped them for The Rocketeer, where
no, that's
because that character is also in part based on Errol Flynn. So I was wondering
the Timothy Dalton character from The Rocketeer.
Both aping something from probably The Adventures of Robin Hood, or was Johnson aping Richard Benjamin here in that? It's something I kind of I scribbled down on a sticky note, and when I find some free time, probably in a couple of weeks, I might sit down with all three.
Yeah, it's something to process and go forward with. The other thing is the sequences that are shot, the Captain from Tortuga and the Defender of the Crown, the sword sequences are really good. Like they're really good. Where you look at them and you go, that could be an Errol Flynn movie. And I think what comes across when you're watching this movie and when you're looking up reviews on it, their movie is never below a certain point. Like it's so good that it's always at least above anything you think it's going to be, right? And then when it hits the highs are really high. Like, and when O'Toole nails things, there's a sequence where Benjy's walking to the soundstage and he's like, "It's okay, you get out there, everything's gonna be great." And he turns to him, he's like, I usually get it in 2 or 3 takes. And he's like, 2 or 3 takes? We get 1 take. This is a live show. What do you mean live? And then it becomes this whole whirlwind. I'm not an actor, I'm a movie star, which is interesting for O'Toole to say, because O'Toole was, and this is something and somebody who watches a lot of movies, O'Toole was both an actor and a movie star.
Oh yeah.
So he's playing this character that doesn't think himself as an actor. But O'Toole was both. O'Toole was the rare Renaissance actor that we had that was capable of extreme highs in both acting and being an icon. And that's one of the great things about the movie, right?
Mm-hmm. And that scene, I think you could see a movie star playing that scene, but it's Peter O'Toole as the actor right there. And he's the one who sells that moment, because otherwise it could come off as like, oh, we went a whole week and you didn't know this was going to be live. It's a iffy moment in the script, honestly, where I'm like, your agent didn't tell you, no one mentioned this at all until just before you're supposed to step out in front of the cameras. That seems suspect.
Yeah, it's he's also been drunk for most of the movie, so it's like that might be one of those things where it's like, I'm willing to forgive it. Like I look at that and I go, okay, that's
I forgive it just reasonable. Because sells it. If I was just reading it on the page, though, I might not be as forgiving.
That's a hell of a point, actually. And I think it did definitely it touched a nerve. Like the Oscar nomination for O'Toole, and when you're looking at Best Actor nominations in 1982, it's a really eclectic bag of nominations, right? You have Ben Kingsley, you have Dustin Hoffman, you have Peter O'Toole, you have, I'm going to miss one of them, you have Paul Newman, right? And Henry Fonda. Like it is a smorgasbord.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's the 1983 Academy Awards, because this came out in 82. It's the 83 awards, I should say. And you're looking at it, you have Ben Kingsley, Dustin Hoffman, Jack Lemmon, I should say. Sorry, Paul Newman and Peter O'Toole. So you have nothing but heavy hitters.
And you got looking at Kingsley and Gandhi. Hoffman was Tootsie. Jack Lemmon was in Missing. Paul Newman was The Verdict.
And
there's not a weak performance there.
There's not it's borderline. Not only is there not a weak performance, those are all and Kingsley wins, right? But it could be argued that Newman and O'Toole are the performance. Like Gandhi is a movie that won a lot of awards, isn't really remembered, is kind of like part of the zeitgeist of historical biopics that the Academy really loves, but it passed over other movies because The Verdict is amazing. It is another 82 movie we're going to talk about later on in the year. Spoiler. Yeah. And some other movies we're actually there's like 3 on this list. But
and I want to just say too, it kind of warms my heart that 2 of these nominations are for comedic roles. You know,
yeah, it's actually really nice because we don't get that now.
Like, you don't get any kind of nominations for comedy, really. It's kind of ghettoized by the Oscars, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's really kind of sad. It's a sad decision that somehow comedy or horror or like some of these genres don't get the love they deserve. But this performance by Peter O Toole is astounding. Mark Linn-Baker's really great. And it leads us into our last section, legacy and franchise viability. Now,
before we do that, though, can we kind of
sure.
go, we didn't hit on anybody else in this cast, really. And this cast is fucking amazing.
It's a really good cast.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, as a love interest, we have Jessica Harper, who everybody knows from Suspiria.
Casey Downing, right?
Shock Treatment. In the comedy writers room, we've got Bill Macy, who's fantastic.
Who's Bill Macy's father?
Yeah.
Who William Macy is our. Mm-hmm. You have. You also have Annie DeSalvo.
Mm-hmm.
You also have Basil Hoffman in the writers' room.
Mm-hmm. You've got Joseph Bologna as King Kaiser.
It's a fantastic performance. He's really funny.
Oh, that's an all-timer for him. That if I just pick one Bologna performance forever.
Yeah, and he's really good as the eccentric leader of a comedy show that keeps everything together. Mm-hmm. That is true. It doesn't get brought up. The chemistry between Baker and O'Toole kind of overstaged, but you got Joseph Bologna, you got Jessica Harper. Lainie Kazan plays Benjy's mom.
Yeah. You've got Cameron Mitchell as a mob boss. George Weiner as the mob boss's lawyer, and everybody remembers him from as Fletch's ex-wife's divorce lawyer from Fletch. Mel
and
Brooks
also in Spaceballs.
Spaceballs, and he's on Reboot on Hulu right now, playing an old-time writer in a
comedy room. Yes, and you also had the amazing Lou Jacoby as Uncle Morty.
Mm-hmm. And as the producer of the show, Adolph Green. And I am a big fan of Adolph Green, and most of the stuff he basically worked with his wife, Betty Comden, and they did some great stuff over the years, including, on Broadway, they wrote the Broadway version of On the Town, which became, the classic movie. For film, they also, they did that. They wrote Singin' in the Rain, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. Another couple of movies like The Bandwagon, Annie Mame, It's Always Fair Weather, Bells Are Ringing. This was like one of his last film credits. He didn't do a whole lot of acting, but he did some acting into it looks like a TV movie in 1994. Oh no, yeah, he did a voice on Frasier in 94, then a TV movie in 96. But this guy is like old school Hollywood, and he definitely deserved to be in this cast because he definitely lent a air of credibility to it all.
Well, yeah, Auntie Mame, Bells Are Ringing. He was also in a weird. I don't want to see Peter. Alan Arkin movie called Simon, right?
Oh gosh, that's right. I forgot about Simon.
But he like the cast is pretty astounding actually. And it all comes together. There's not a piece of it where you go, none of it works. Lainie Kazan's really funny. I mean, it's Cameron Mitchell. Cameron Mitchell. The story goes Cameron Mitchell met Sid Caesar at some point, or met Mel Brooks, and basically talked him into doing the role. And said, "Hey, we'd like to get you on there." Now, another weird thing that in my research, So in the middle of the movie, there's a sequence where they go to a restaurant that Alan Swann has gotten in trouble in before. They go to this restaurant. There's a beautiful woman with a mafioso type guy. Benjy has to do a distraction, but before the distraction, Alan Swann dances with a woman who is the husband has come over and go. My wife is a huge fan. I think it's a 50th anniversary, and he goes over and very charmingly dances with the older woman. Do you know the older woman is Gloria Stewart from Titanic?
Oh my God! No, I didn't realize that. I'm ashamed I didn't recognize her when I watched it. Earlier.
No, and that's one of the incredible things. There are some really interesting cameos of cameos. It's a cameo surrounded by another cameo, and it's I think it's one of those movies where the more you watch it, the rhythms of it get into the comedy rhythms and being able to write and being able to look at things like the rat-a-tat-tat nature of the jokes are the one guy, the one person on the writing staff that doesn't say anything except to the one girl, Tanny DeSalvo, and she blurts out whatever he says, but it's usually like it could be a long response, but it's usually no, Herb. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's amazing. And the legacy. I'm going to come up with a funny legacy for you here.
Okay.
I think Mark Lynn-Baker gets Perfect Strangers because of this movie.
Oh, he most does.
I think the chemistry and the amount of funny in this movie is enough where he gets I can work with somebody, and a lot of the role of Benjy Stone is directly related to dealing with Balky.
Yes.
Alan Swann and Balky are virtually the same thematic character.
Yes.
So Mark Lynn-Baker, that's one of my favorite ones, The Legacy. The idea that Mark Lynn-Baker would do this movie and then for years doing Perfect Strangers would be doing this movie over and over and over again with not a drunk, but his foreign cousin from Mypos.
Yes. Now, another interesting, I think, legacy of this is this is not the only piece of fiction to have been inspired by working in the writer's room of your show of shows. In 1993, Neil Simon, I do that every now and then. Neil Simon, who had also worked on your show of shows alongside Mel Brooks and some others, he wrote a play called Laughter on the 23rd Floor, which is basically a fictionalized version of some of his memories of working on the show. And playing head writer Val Slotsky in the original Broadway cast, Mark Lynn-Baker.
Interesting. So and because Mark Lynn-Baker was a Broadway guy, so he gets a little.
Didn't he do Into the Woods at some point too? Or am I misremembering something?
I don't know. We got to check Mark. I'm gonna give me a second.
I know he did Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. I know he did the short-lived Doonesbury musical, where he played Mark.
Noise is off.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
But hold on. Let's do Mark Lynn. Every once in a while you gotta go on the internet. You gotta be able to find these things quick. So what do? You do Mark Lynn-Baker, you do Broadway. Then he comes up in Wiki.
I may be misremembering.
Well, give me a second.
Not coming up. It's not coming up, so I'm thinking I'm misremembering something.
Oh, maybe. I think that's wild. That is only his. Oh wait, hold on. Relatively speaking, one act play by Woody Allen. He did 6 Broadway shows. Hold on. So we got Relatively Speaking. Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Form with Nathan Lane.
Oof.
Off Broadway in The School for Scandal. Um,
Well, and I mean, Mark Lynn Baker's still working. Obviously, if you watched She-Hulk on Disney Plus, he played Jen Walters' dad.
Yeah, he's definitely still working, and he's still got the it's really funny. A lot of his roles are Benjy Stone's. Like even with Jen Walters, his role is reacting to Jennifer, be a good girl, don't break anything. Like so it's very funny. Like Benjy Stone has followed him. And also one of the weird not weird really, I guess. There was a 1992 Broadway musical version of My Favorite Year. Lainey Kazan was the only member of the cast to reprise her role in it. Tim Curry played Alan Swann on Broadway.
That's a good choice, I think.
That's a great choice.
I got to see Tim Curry in Spam-A-Lot, like right when it first opened, and it was Tim Curry playing Tim Curry's King Arthur, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was very much like, hi, I'm Tim Curry, and I will be playing King Arthur for you. He was not playing King Arthur. He was playing Tim Curry as King Arthur. But I could see Tim Curry in this kind of a role, though. He has that same type of charisma. He has that same actorly quality where he could, definitely evoke that emotional core of the underlying sadness that he hides behind that facade. And I'm
gonna blow you away. We forgot Mark Lynn Baker's. So I found Mark Lynn Baker's Broadway stuff. Doonesbury comic strip, which you said, Laughter on 23rd Floor. Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum with Nathan Lane, which is pretty good. He did a roundabout theater production of A Flea in Her Ear, which is I think that's a French comedy, right? Yes. And then he did the 2003 musical version of A Year with Frog and Toad. So he was either Frog or Toad, which is a fantastic character for him to play. Either one. Either one. So that's an interesting. Mark Lynn Baker did a lot of. He's gotten a lot of work and a lot of mileage out of starring opposite Peter O Toole, and you got to think that most of the movies that people saw, most of the reasons he was able to plow through, the chemistry with one of the greatest movie stars of Hollywood, in the history of Hollywood, has got to play into it. And I love the idea that they made a Broadway musical out of it, right? I mean, I love the idea that, whatever. And you do see some things where, Reboot is a little bit about the writing room of a modern sitcom. So, this back and forth.
With a fun mixture of young comedy writers and old timers.
And also the idea of dealing with actors, right? The actors on that show are it's Michael Keegan-Key and Judy Greer and Johnny Knoxville. And they're like the acting side of it. Reboot is like a weekly My Favorite Year, because just getting to the episodes of the show are dealing with all these actors' egos and stuff. So it's an interesting.
The first season is only 8 episodes, and the last episode just dropped this week. So if you're looking for something to watch some evening, it's a 4-hour watch altogether.
It's a great show. It's been a lot of fun. Paul Reiser's in it. It's been really good, actually. But this movie is one of those things where it has a nostalgia factor to it that makes you want to go back and watch the old timey swords movies. It makes you. The viability isn't necessarily in the franchise or in the movie itself. The viability is it makes you search out stuff about old timey comedy, especially if like you've taken improv classes like I have, or if you're a little bit obsessed with comedy and how it functions in a sketch performance, like watching Saturday Night Live or whatever. This is a great conduit of that, in the sense that you're watching these actors write, and then you're watching these writers write, and then an actor gets dropped into the mix. It's got to be very similar to what happens on Saturday Night Live on a weekly basis. And so we haven't gotten like your show shows Laughter on the 23rd Floor era of comedy. We've gotten a few things. We haven't gotten necessarily what the writers' rooms are like now. That's where Reboot comes in and a couple other things. So the legacy of this is, and one big legacy has to be the appreciation factor of Peter O'Toole. If you watch this movie and you fall in love with Peter O'Toole, because again, in '82 I was around 8, right? So I don't necessarily know who Peter O'Toole is, but I know he's the funny guy in My Favorite Year. But this movie is an excellent gateway drug to Peter O'Toole. And when you talk about Peter O'Toole and you look at that legacy that he had of the work that he had throughout a huge career in Hollywood, where you look at it, this movie is an excellent gateway drug where you're gonna you might find yourself seeking out a little Peter O'Toole afterwards, and if you are, I'd be remiss not to talk about, let's say, Lion in Winter, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, Night of the Generals, Man of La Mancha. Night of the Generals is fantastic.
What's New Pussycat?
What's New Pussycat? Lawrence of Arabia is a must, an absolute must for any film person. If you can experience, so I got turned on to this movie and then Lawrence of Arabia. I watched Lawrence of Arabia with my dad. When I went to college in '92, there was a theater that was a 70mm theater that played the recut version of Lawrence of Arabia. So I got to see it in 70mm, which is one of the it was so good. And it's a beautiful movie. But this is a gateway drug movie. The legacy of this movie is it opened Peter O'Toole to children of the '80s. And he will not do you wrong. Like, you can watch any Peter O'Toole movie and Night of the Generals is really an interesting one. It's an underrated thriller. It's about a Nazi general that also happens to be in addition to being a crazy Nazi, he's also which again, I don't know how we're not again classifying any Nazis as bad right now, but he's a Nazi who also happens to be a murderer of prostitutes. So he's a serial killer on top of being a Nazi, which again
is kind of really, man. That seems like it's a bit much. We got it.
That's a Nazi. It's like a win-win. It's a Nazi. So you're a sociopath and you're a Nazi. Well, you're both. But you're
the Nazis. That's not good.
But it wasn't one of those movies it was one of those movies my dad remembered when he was a kid that never really got released on it just didn't get released because of the subject matter on VHS or beta or whatever. And when it finally came out, my dad was so excited. And Peter O'Toole he's bone chilling. And the performance it reminds me of now in my adulthood is Eamon Geth from Schindler's List. He's very reminiscent of Ralph Fiennes. He's young and attractive like Ralph Fiennes. So it's something where you can find it and you can, it's a gateway drug.
Major O'Toole roles that I haven't seen yet. So,
and that's the thing. Peter O'Toole is probably worth a year of the show. We could probably do a whole show on Peter O'Toole. It'd be my favorite year. It'd be funny. And then Mark Linn-Baker, is another gateway thing. If you like this movie, you will definitely like Perfect Strangers. You will definitely like his other things that he's done because he brings a lot of the same manic energy to it. The facial expressions, it's like a gateway drug movie. Like it's a movie that you can end up getting addicted to a lot of things from as a legacy. Okay, we talked a lot. I feel we're good. I feel like we did it justice. I feel like it's
we could talk about favorite jokes and things like that. But I don't want to. I want people to discover
I'd rather you experience it. Yeah, you should definitely experience it for yourself. It's gotta be the bathroom joke, right? Like it's Selma Diamond. It's him and Selma Diamond. That's the best joke. That's the best joke in the movie. Or Casey Downing trying to tell a joke is
That's good too. I mean,
that's one of my favorite moments.
Somebody just wrote, Selma Diamond reacts in a script, and she sells it though with that reaction shot at the end of that sequence.
Oh, that's yes.
I mean, they give O'Toole a great line, and she tops it without opening her mouth.
Well, and it's a joke on top of a joke on top of a joke, and he nails it, and then she kind of like she does a head turn that's ever so it's very Michael Myers-ish, but it's it's a great joke. That's a great joke. And then there's a Casey Downing joke, which she can't tell jokes. She just tells Benjy, "I'm not good at telling jokes." Very cool.
It's a sweet, funny moment.
Yeah, it's a really and Benjy tells a funny joke that I feel you can tell anywhere. I feel that joke is a good joke and works anywhere you go, even with kids, as long as they're allowed to curse a little bit. But the whole movie is really fun, and the legacy also is it becomes one of those movies that it just warms your heart, right? I mean, we don't get to talk about like our hearts a lot with regards to being, but it's one of those movies where it's a very heartwarming, charming, but brutally funny movie with just
it keeps alive the idea of what live television was in the 50s at the infancy of the medium, the golden age of television, where there was, it just wasn't Sid Caesar's show of shows. Milton Berle's show was what, Colgate
Jackie
Comedy.
Gleason.
Jackie Gleason. All of those shows were done live, and they were flying by their seat.
No nets.
No nets.
No nets.
That's something outside of Saturday Night Live and like the nightly news. You don't get live television anymore, and
the only thing we've gotten recently. The only thing we've gotten recently are the Jimmy Kimmel Live of the Norman Lear shows, but that's the closest.
Fun, or sometimes when they've done those live musicals, but those seem almost like the exception. A film like this, though, even if it's comedically exaggerated,
and also it's brisk.
So alive, how that actually was back then. And
it's a brisk movie as well. It's very fast. It's a very fast 90 minutes. It will not take long for you to fall in love with it. And we're going to do 2 TV movies in a row, I guess, because the other movie we're next week. Again, it should have been this week, and we're sorry, but we're not sorry. But we're sorry, but we're not. Yeah. Next week, a movie that begs the question: what kind of mask would you purchase? And I just when I found the poster, Rich, I think this tagline is one of the greatest taglines ever put on a sequel poster ever. Because the Halloween poster is the night he came home, and the Halloween 3 Season of the Witch poster is the night no one comes home.
Yes.
That's beautiful. And we're going to talk about Halloween 3.
Yeah, it's a nice symmetry, and it's just a chilling statement.
It's a really cool it's often and here's the thing. It's I view it as the redheaded stepchild of the Halloween franchise. When they do all the pictures of the Halloween franchise and the timelines and whatever, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch always is at the bottom right corner, all by itself on an island. And I'm going to tell you right now, when we lean into this next week, I am pro Season of the Witch. I know it doesn't have Michael. I'm pro. So we'll get into it next week. A couple things we want to talk about. Joe writes, great show, guys. Halloween 3 will be fun. It is. I do want to put something in the comments as well. We are super excited to talk about them. We haven't talked about all the stuff. First off, we are super excited to announce that we have our own candle, Rich.
We do.
We have our own. We have our own candle. Yes. So if you go Hearts of the Mystic Folk, and shop in if you follow that link that's in our notes, that's in our comments, and also I'm going to put it on the screen right now for everyone to see. If you go there, You can buy the Generation Movie candle. You can then smell the popcorn candle and watch My Favorite Year or Halloween 3 Season of the Witch or any of the movies we watched on.
Or if you're Joe, Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. Come on, Joe.
Yeah, well, or something. You can watch movies. Actually, I prefer him see My Favorite Year more than Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. If you're behind a Dead Men, fine. But My Favorite Year, something you should see. But Hearts of the Mystic Folk have made our own. We have our own scent. It is a popcorn scented candle, and if you follow this site, it'll take you right to the. If you follow this link, both in the comments and on the show itself, it will take you directly to our link. You can pan down. You will see the Generation Movie popcorn scented candle made specifically for our show. By all means, purchase it. Watch them with a movie that makes some real popcorn. Watch something, have fun, enjoy your Halloween. Rich, where can people find you?
Well, for the next 2 days, they can find me at the Philadelphia Film Festival. I'm planning on catching a couple more films. I need to write up a bunch of reviews. The one thing I'm looking forward to tomorrow evening is the Philadelphia premiere of Weird, the Al Yankovic story. I'm just excited to see that movie because it's going to be in a theater, and that's where I think comedy needs to be seen. I hate the idea that this movie is going directly to Roku and isn't getting a standard theatrical release. Kind of bums me out.
No comedies. Confess Fletch and this go directly home.
But Confess Fletch did get a little bit of a theatrical. It got a mercy release, but all those reviews plus other features and news and analysis can be found at filmbuffonline.com. The other podcast I do with my delightful co-host Natasha Bogutsky, the Big Picture podcast, that is also available through Film Buff Online, or just go online and search bigpicturepod.com. That'll take you right to it as well. And I am on the Twitter machine at FilmBuffRich.
So India Escape Network is first for us on Facebook and you can subscribe also on the YouTube channel. And I am informed by Joe Ridgely that we now have our own subscribe portion of that for Generation Movie. So by all means, go in, take a look, subscribe, link up, get us. If you like our show every week, we'd love for you to subscribe and listen to it. You can also find me online at on Facebook at JW the Movie Guy, Twitter JW the Movie Guy, and Instagram at JW the Movie Guy. And then we also have a wonderful little page called Loud and Nerdy, the group, and a page. The group has over 700 members. We do all kinds of fun stuff, and there's plenty to be had there. Next week, Halloween gets extended. Halloween doesn't end. What a bad movie. But Halloween doesn't end next week. We get Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. Quick comments portion. Let's see. We got... I watched Demo before your episode. Oh, that's right. He did. Yeah, he already watched that. I'm looking forward to Weird. Yeah, I think Weird's going to be good, Joe. Joe's now he's jumped into the Indie Escape Network body. He's like Lawnmower Man. He goes all over the place. Thank you for joining us on a Wednesday night. We appreciate you listening to our show, and we hope to see everybody back next week. Have a happy Halloween. Be safe. Don't do anything stupid, and be nice to people. Be kind. And thanks for joining us on a Wednesday night for Generation Movie.